Okay, good afternoon. Today, I was going to share with you a makeup lecture on uh, on Michelangelo. For those of you that have missed it, or you may need to refresh for taking the quiz. So we're going to have a couple thoughts about Michelangelo for a few minutes, and let's get into it. Okay, Michelangelo was an artist during the Renaissance, and when we talked about uh, Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo being inspired by the bronze doors. That's what's really cool about Kansas City. We have a copy of those bronze doors. I'm not going to get into it. That was not a lecture. But to know and understand that we have those gates of paradise, of which Michelangelo called the gates of paradise. They weren't going to be that. That's not the original name of them. Michelangelo is going to call them the gates of paradise. He's going to be so inspired by them. So we have, Brunelleschi and Galberte. Galberte does the doors. Uh, they have sense of depth in them, linear perspective, partially in it. Masaccio comes along and he does the tribute money in the Holy Trinity, and he develops the principles and elements of linear perspective, all the rules, and then another 40 years later, Leonardo da Vinci comes along. He's inspired by it, and he does the Last Supper, which also has linear perspective in it. And then you have Leonardo da Vinci's life, but also not too far away from the Duomo, where Michelangelo's later uh, parents' home, not when he was born, but when he lived later in his life. His parents' home is it's just about 7, 8 blocks away from the Duomo, where the bronze doors are. And this is a painting of Michelangelo. When you go to his parents' homes, they have a half dozen, 6, 7, 8 paintings of Michelangelo, and they're done by other famous artists that knew him. And and it's really kind of cool to go there and see the artwork, see the paintings and the artwork and the work that he did when he was a kid. Michelangelo, unlike Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo was not born in a bad class. Uh, he he was born to upper middle class parents. His father was a banker in a kind of smaller bank, but still a nice job. But what happens is there's going to be a couple of things that happen to him. His mother's going to get very sick, and she's going to pass away. And there was a nanny that worked for them that helped raise Michelangelo. And then Michelangelo's father's banking job, the bank's going to go under, and it's going to cause some real financial problems also. So what happened was the nanny takes Michelangelo home to raise him, and the nanny's husband is a stonecutter. So he's a stonecutter. That's what he does. So and then his family owned a quarry, which you can get marble at and just cut stones and things like that. So Michelangelo at age 6 goes to live with the stonecutter. Now Michelangelo later is going to talk about his childhood, and he said at a very early age his fingers became the chisels and the mallets, almost as someone would touch something with their hands and form them. He said he became very natural at that. And Michelangelo, when he was 80 years old, they said he can chisel faster and more accurate than 4 master sculptors with chisels. It just became a very strong, natural sculptor, Michelangelo. Now, Michelangelo, when he was about 15 years old, he gets a slab of marble and he carves into that slab of marble only about an inch relief, so it's not very deep. But you can see where he just kind of scrapes in here and brings out these forms. This is the Madonna of the Stairs. So this is the Mother Mary and the baby Jesus, and Michelangelo is going to be carving out these forms. When he does this at age 15, now this is at his parents' home. So when I was a kid, I'd bring home artwork from school. My mom would get a magnet and put it up on the refrigerator. These are the projects that Michelangelo's family would have brought home and put around the house, and still around the house right now. This is in his parents' home, his father's home. So here you got this beautiful piece of marble. It's about, I would say, about 20 by 16. maybe a little bit bigger than that. I don't remember exactly the size, maybe 24 by 30. It's not huge, but it's a nice, beautiful piece that he carves out of marble. And when Michelangelo cut this piece, it really got a lot of attention at this time because of the Florence dome and the Florence doors. And Leonardo da Vinci is in his wheelhouse right now. Donatello's going crazy right now. There's a lot of really good artists around right now in Florence, and Florence really is going to be one of the major art capitals of the Western world at this point. And so this young Michelangelo, who's a half generation behind Leonardo da Vinci and some of the others, um, he's going to do this piece. And a lot of the historians, not the historians, but the art, the art people at that time, art teachers and art critics in Florence this time said, "Boy, this guy's really good. This kid, this 15-year-old, he's got a lot of potential. He's got a high ceiling." So he gets some notoriety because of it. And then the next year, when he's 16 years old, he does this piece right here, and this is the Battle of the Centaurs. And so here you have these this battle going on. This one's a little bit larger piece of marble, and it's thicker, and it's cut into it deeper. It may be like 3 inches deep as far as the. I don't remember when I saw it. I'm kind of remembering it being about 3 inches deep, the relief on it, the thickness of it. So he's cutting down between these pieces. Now, at age 16, he submits this piece. And some of the art critics in Florence at this time said, because of the composition and what he's done here, some people thought he was the best sculptor in Florence. So you got this kid who's not only, uh, you know, been through all the education and the years and years of mentoring. And he just splashes on the scene with this absolutely incredible piece. Just blows everybody away. They're saying not only can he be the best artist, he may be the best artist in Florence at this time. Really kind of blew a lot of people away. And then, see, that's when he's uh, 16. And then what happens is he gets this piece, and then after this piece, uh, he does another piece, does Hercules, and so when he's 17 and 18, 19, he does a fairly decent piece, and they say that that piece was sold, I think if I remember, it was sold to Rome or somewhere, and someone purchased it and it was sold in transport as it was being moved. It was lost or basically stolen, probably, and we've lost that. We don't have that because of that. So here he is at 15, he does this nice piece, gets notoriety. At 16, he may be the best sculptor in town. And then at 19, 20, 21, he does a piece that blows the doors off everything, which we don't have an image of course. So now you got this young artist who's really getting some notoriety. So he has delivered to a studio. He's got a studio, and now he's 22, 23, 24 years old. So there's 3 years there, 3.5 years. He gets this big piece of marble delivered to his studio. I'm just estimating, maybe, 7, 8 feet wide, 4 feet deep, 6 feet tall, maybe 6, 7 feet tall. So it's a pretty good piece of marble. It's going to weigh a couple tons. So it's going to be delivered to a studio. Michelangelo had a habit of not sharing what he was doing with people. He would lock himself in and he would cover it up and he would never let anybody see what he was doing. He'd never let anybody see what he was doing. Uh, and this is the way he was. Uh, I kind of understand that when I'm doing artwork, I don't want people asking me a lot of questions. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Why aren't you doing it this way? It just is really irritating. It really blocks your ability to really do good work when you get in the groove of doing good work. So he just didn't want to have to deal with people. So he just didn't do it. So what he does is he gets done at age 24. He gets done and he submits this piece of work. Now, this is called the Pieta. This is the Pieta that's in St. Peter's, so St. Peter's Basilica, Pieta. And this is interesting. And if you take a look at this, It has the composition of a triangle. It has the composition of a square. It has a rectangle all the way out. And loosely, it has the circle. So the Renaissance artists, in adhering to the rules of the Renaissance, when they paint, they do it's all symmetrical and it's all with these perfect shapes. And in sculpture, they actually try to use these perfect shapes and mathematics in doing what they're doing. So this piece is supposed to be viewed from straight on because that's the composition. Actually, the composition is fairly two-dimensional. It's not meant to be seen from behind. It's not meant to be seen from the side. It's meant to be seen on the front. Now, this starts an amazing career, Michelangelo. Sure, before he was doing some really cool stuff and he was really good. But this piece separates him from everybody else. And what happens here is you realize that this is the Mother Mary and her dead son Christ. So, what is she, about 48, 49 years old? And he's 33 years old. He's a carpenter. He's probably not a scroungy little wimp. He's probably someone that's worked his life. And if you look at this piece, when you first look at it, you go, oh, that looks pretty nice. But what happens is, if Michelangelo would have sculpted things anatomically correct, where Leonardo da Vinci was painting anatomically correct, Donatello was sculpting anatomically correct. The proportions were correct in Leonardo da Vinci's paintings, and they were proportionally correct in Donatello's sculptures. We didn't talk about Donatello, but that's what Donatello was doing. So Michelangelo has the ability to sculpt anatomically correct. He's got the ability to do it. He had the ability to do it when he was 15, but it's not what he wants to do. He wants to make something not perfect, but he wants to make it better than perfect. See, Renaissance artists understood that we, the viewers, are real people in the real world. We have a brain, we have an eye, we see things from our perspective. We are individual viewers of the artwork, and we're real and we exist. Artists aren't just making artwork to make artwork, they're making artwork to be viewed by a human being in the real world. So, what happens is, if Michelangelo would have sculpted Mother Mary at her size and weight, and then Christ at his size and weight, when he laid across her, he would dwarf her. He would be so much bigger. It looked like he would break her legs. Oh, by the way, a pieta, I'm sorry, when you have like a crucifix, that's Christ on the cross. A pieta is when you have Christ's body taken off the cross, and you have usually the Mother Mary holding and supporting her dead son's body. And when you see that subject, that's a pieta, and this is a pieta. So here, but it would look awkward to have this huge, massive person sitting on the lap of his elderly mother. So, what Michelangelo has done, he's made the Mother Mary, he's made her bigger than she would be in reference to Christ. And she makes Christ smaller. So, when she brings them together, they look right. So, when you look at it in the real world, it looks right to you. Okay? If you were to weigh the Mother Mary and weigh the marble volume of Jesus Christ, she would outweigh him 4-1. She's massive compared to him. She's 4 times bigger than Christ. It doesn't look like that when you first see it. And also, if you were to wave a magic wand and they would poof become real, and she stood up and he stood up, she would stand 4 feet taller than him. She's just absolutely massive compared to him. But what he does, he distorts the human form so it looks perfect when you look at it. And that's one of the elements of the Renaissance. Now, matter of fact, people didn't believe it was him. He made this wonderful piece, and people didn't believe that this 24-year-old, 23, 24-year-old could do such a marvelous piece, this greatest piece that had ever been done in the history of the world, people were saying. So, and they didn't believe him. So he took her back and he chiseled his name across the front of her chest. And you'll see right here, you have Michelangelo's name chiseled across there. There was a hairline fracture here. The face had to be replaced in the early 70s when someone hit her face with a sledgehammer and had to be repaired. Okay, I was talking about the perfect shapes. Here's your triangle, your square, your rectangle, and then there's circle. Perfect mathematics in drawing and painting. And then he also was going to take the challenge of doing that in sculpture, which was a lot more difficult to do. Okay, now I tell you all that so I can tell you this. You know, when we take a look at art through the ages, uh, some 20, maybe 30 years ago, an organization took a poll. They questioned 14,000 artists and art historians and art teachers. And they polled them, and 80% of those that were questioned that had seen Michelangelo's David said David was the most impressive piece of artwork ever made by the hand of man. So here we have a piece right here. And most people recognize this piece as David. And you see David and you go, yeah, okay, it's David. David slew Goliath. But when you see this piece, there's something about it which makes your brain just really, really appreciate what's going on here. And you don't see it through a photograph. You got to see it in person. It sounds kind of funny, but you really do. And this is my explanation of that. What happens is if you're standing here, like you see people standing here, if I was standing right here, I'd be about this tall. And I would be able to reach up at about 8 foot level, and I would be able to touch David's toes at about 8 foot level. Now, Michelangelo had delivered to his studio a big piece of marble that was 17 feet tall and probably about 4 foot by 2 or 3 feet. And he's going to spend 4 years. He's going to be 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. So really about 4.5 years. He's going to work on this piece of marble in complete secrecy. He's going to chisel this piece away. But there's some things here. Remember, he wants it to not look perfect, and he can do it anatomically perfect if he wanted to, but he wants it to be better than perfect. It's incredible to think about this. What happens is Michelangelo understands that when you look at the real world, when there's people right in front of you, they're really big. And when there's people far away from you, they're smaller. He understands Masaccio's linear perspective. It happened a generation before him. He understands perspective. He understands that when you and I, when we go downtown Kansas City and there's a building that's 50 stories tall, we don't go get out of the car and stand at the sidewalk. And we don't look at this building and go, why are the rooms on the bottom of the building so big and the rooms at the top of the building so small? And we don't sit there and look up and go, are those little people up there? No, we don't do that. We know from being a human being, from a little baby being raised, we're understanding visually that as things get further away from us, they get smaller. We get out of a car in Kansas City, and every time we get out of the car, we don't have to go through that whole thought process of why are the people way up there really small? We don't do that. Our brain has already made that adjustment for us. So now in the real world, just living the real world, our brain understands that. And our consciousness thinks about other things. It doesn't think about that. Okay? So Michelangelo understands that when you are looking at a sculpture that's 16 feet tall, and it starts at 8 foot and goes up from there, it's going to be 20 some feet tall. He understands that if you sit at the base of the sculpture, which is made to be seen from below, that the feet would be huge and the head would be little tiny. Now he knows we make an adjustment with that, but he knows it's going to look odd. So he does something that is massively unbelievable. Remember when he changed the scale of the Mother Mary and Jesus Christ? He made Mary big and Christ small. So when you saw it, it looked right. What he's going to do with this piece is he's going to take the feet down here and he's going to make them smaller. And then as it goes up the body, the scale gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So therefore, the head is oversized. And as you move down, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller scale until you get way down here at the bottom. So the top is overscale, the bottom is underscale, and it's a gradual scale from large to small. So that when you stand below this piece and you look up at it, the feet and the head look anatomically correct. So he's not sculpting this perfect like Donatello would. He's sculpting this, he's changing the proportions, he's altering it so that when you, from your brain and your eye in the real world, when you look at this, it looks perfect from your point of view. Almost all the photographs of this you see from a distance, or someone gets up on scaffolding and they take a picture of it straight on like that. And when you look at it, it just doesn't look that good. Now, it all looks nice, but it doesn't look, there's a lot of sculptures that look nicer than this. When you look at it, it just doesn't look like it's in proportion. The head doesn't look right. The feet don't look right because it's being viewed from a non-humanistic view. It's made to be viewed down here. Now, what happens with this, where the magic is with this, is when you, the viewer, when you walk in the academy and you walk before this piece and you look up at it, your brain wants to make that adjustment like a building, okay? Your brain wants to make the adjustment, but Michelangelo's already made that adjustment. So your brain is here going, whoa, 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 whoa. Your brain's trying to make the adjustment, but it's already been made. So your brain kind of freaks out a little bit. Your brain's never seen this before. So subconsciously, you get this unbelievable almost rush of your brain stimulated, and it's just, it's a feeling that you don't ever feel before. So when you go see this, like the first time I saw David, I was by myself, and I walked into the academy. There weren't that many people in there. It wasn't a very crowded day. And excuse me, I walk in there, and I look up, and I'm looking at David, and it's just blowing me away. My brain's just going nuts. And I don't know how long I stood there, but I realized after a while that my mouth is dry because I was looking up, and my mouth was open. And when I realized that, I go, oh, I closed my mouth, I put my head down, and I'm going, there's probably people laughing at me, standing there with my mouth open, staring at this thing. So I kind of closed my eyes, and I just kind of opened my eyes and kind of looked around. And there was about a dozen people there, all of them standing there silently, looking up, most of them with their mouths open. It was just people going, almost like a religious experience. And it just was just blowing people away. It's just how absolutely unbelievable it is. But because of that interaction between what Michelangelo did and the adjustment that he did to distort the human form and the reaction of your brain dealing with that, trying to adjust to it where it's already been done, that kind of special thing that goes on inside your head when you see it in person makes this piece a fantastic piece. It makes this piece to be known as the greatest piece of artwork ever made. And 80% of artists and art historians will say that. So it's kind of a cool thing. But again, it's important to go see it in person. It's in Florence, Italy. It's about 5 or 6 blocks north of the Bronze Doors, where the Bronze Doors are in Florence. Okay, this is kind of looking a little bit up at it, kind of gives you some of the detail. This is kind of looking up at, I found this on the internet. It's not perfect, but you can kind of see where the dynamics of this change a little bit when you're looking up at it. See some of the detail. You can kind of see the scale here. I put this in to see that scale. And then I added this piece here. I just like this where the person's sitting here cleaning it. You can see how large this piece is. It's huge. And it's just absolutely stunningly beautiful that one person, this young of an age of a person, can sit here and just do something as spectacular as this. Okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit. This is St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, and I'm going to try to make up a little bit of time here. But this is the largest basilica in the world. These sculptures here on the top right here are about 25 feet tall. These are little people down here. Can't really even see anybody down here. This is the front door. When you walk in the front door of the Vatican, this is the Vatican. The Vatican is the head of the Catholic Church. The Vatican is its own country. It's just not a building in Rome. It's its own country. When you walk in the front door right here, you look to your right, right behind this wall right here, right on the inside is Michelangelo's Pieta. And that's where it's at. Michelangelo, when he was 70 years old, he was named chief architect for designing the building of St. Peter's and dealing with the dome. Now, this is St. Peter's. Now, we just took a photograph. That photograph we just saw was from here, looking at the front door. You look to the right, and right behind that wall right there is the Pieta. If you look at these sculptures right here, most of these sculptures, I say some are 25, but most of these are about 20 feet tall. And these sculptures were done by Bernini from the studio of Bernini, which we're going to talk about in a week and a half from now. But again, there's walls around all this area. And this area right here that we're looking at, this is the Vatican. This right here is the Sixtina Chapel, where the Sixtina Chapel ceiling is painted. And this is where the Pope's personal apartment is. And this is the balcony right here that the Pope speaks from every week. So you got this massive, I'm telling you, this front right here, you can stack from the back parking lot at Schlegel, and how tall the building is, you can stack like 3 of those on top of each other to get right here, this size right here. When you walk into, oh, one more, this is from on top. This is on top of the dome. This is a beautiful place to go up. You can see almost all of Rome. It's beautiful up here. This is the top roof of the basilica, and you're on the dome looking down. This is the courtyard. Those are the sculptures that are 25 feet tall. They're fairly large. And over here at the top, that's the Pantheon. That's what we talked about, that Roman dome that was a poured piece of concrete. And the Colosseum is going to be over this hill, and you're not going to be able to see it from here. But this is the top. This is walking inside St. Peter's Basilica. You'll see that the hallways in here are almost 250 feet tall. The scale of the inside of this building is just massive. The beauty is unparalleled. It's just absolutely gorgeous inside this place. It's top notch all the way. And when you walk inside here, this is the main altar. Remember we talked about cathedrals having that Latin cross, where you have the main body of the church and the cross this way, and where the cross is meet, that's where the dome was. And that's the dome right there. This is where the cross meets. And this is an altar done by Lorenzo Galberti, Bernini. And this sculpture is 100 feet tall. This altar is 100 feet tall. And you can see how massive everything is here. Again, if you turn right now, you look and you see the Michelangelo's Pieta. We get closer to the altar, and you start looking at the dome. You can see some of the detail. This is a 1/4 shot, so you're seeing through the crossbar of where the cross hits, looking up into the dome. And this is a beautiful sculpture. There's some of the Michelangelo drawings and things that they had. They originally had 2 large, tall bell towers, that the foundations cracked, so they had to take down the bell towers. And it's the dome that Michelangelo. What people don't realize is that you go up some stairs or an elevator to the roof. You walk across the roof and you get to the dome. And the dome we talked about has a drum on it, and that drum is many stories tall. So you go onto the roof and you get to the drum and you go up some stairs to this area. Then you can come out inside the dome and you can walk inside the dome and look down at people down here. You go back inside and you go inside a corridor here and you go into the dome and you start going upstairs. And the stairs spin around and rotate and that's what this area here, this void area right here. This void area, this void area is actually between the ceiling and the wall of the top, the outside of the dome, and the inside of the dome. And then you pop out the top right here, and you see everything from there. So this is Michelangelo's drawings for that. This is inside the dome, looking straight up inside the dome. Like I told you, you can go up the drum, and you can see uh, there's a railing right here. You can go right here, and you walk all the way around this right here. From standing right here. It's just beautiful inside there and going to the top of the dome. Okay, this right here is a very old building. It's much older than St. Peter's. It's more of a Gothic, but it's not a flamboyant building at all. It's very basic, but it's right next to the cathedral. Cathedral's right here. I showed you in the aerial shot where it was. In here, we have the Sixtina Chapel. The Sixtina Chapel is between the Basilica and the Pope's home. And when you walk between them, you can come to the Sixtina here. The Sixtina is one of Michelangelo's greatest accomplishments. He is going to be painting the ceiling, and he's going to paint later on in life. He's going to paint the Last Judgment. So the ceiling is going to be the book of Genesis in the Old Testament, all the bunch of stories and different prophets and different things that happen in Genesis. And the Last Judgment is going to be Christ judging mankind. The people at the top are carrying the cross of Christ, and they're being judged to go to heaven. And the people below here are being judged and condemned to hell. The other paintings on the side, some are done by Raphael and other famous Renaissance artists. So Michelangelo will do the ceiling. And this is a good look at the ceiling. It's kind of a little bit out of focus, and this is an older photograph. If it was a newer photograph, it would be cleaned. During the 1980s, they cleaned the ceiling, which was really kind of cool. When I was there the first time, they were halfway done with the cleaning of the ceiling, and they had a scaffolding up there just over one section. And so you can see one whole half of it was dirty, and the other whole half was clean. And you can tell the difference between the clean and the dirty part of the ceiling. And this is a map, and it tells you who's who and what's what. And you can see right here you have Adam and Eve being cast out of the garden, and there's different stories here. This one right here is, they call it the creation of Adam. But in reality, what Michelangelo has referred to it is God giving Adam intelligence. Now that's important here, because here you got Adam, and he's touching God here. And if you see this fabric right here and these bodies right here, here's Eve, the legs coming out here and the fabric coming out. If you got a human brain and you cut it in half and you looked at a cross section of that human brain, this is exactly the shape of the human brain, with all the little parts. Has all the parts of the human brain in there. So here you have God giving Adam intelligence. In this image right here, I was in a store last week which had this frame image. This is all that was in the frame. And I turned to the guy at the store, and I said, "This beautiful piece." And he goes, "Yes." I said, realize that that's the symbol of creativity. It's the international symbol of creativity worldwide is Michelangelo's fresco here. Now, here we have the picture of the brain, where you see the sections of the brain come here, the lobes here, all these things here all mean something. The leg means something, this leg means something. Everything's here. It's just kind of it has some great depth to it. This is before it was cleaned. This is after it was cleaned. You can see the difference here. This is the Liban symbol, and Library, like a library, and here you have this figure that Michelangelo has studied ancient Greek sculpture, and when he did that, he can see the beauty of the human form. His figures usually got some muscles to them, even the women work out in his paintings and in his sculptures too. Don't mess with any of the women in his paintings and sculptures; they could probably kick your booty. But anyways, these women are well built and they're strong. You see, she's opening the book, her body's twisted, and you see this beautiful form here, and how the form just kind of just hides itself under this beautiful fabric right here. Just an exquisite piece. Last Judgment. Again, this piece is a little blurry. I didn't when I got it on here. I didn't realize it was as bad as it was. But there's a doorway over here that you come in, and again, this is the Last Judgment. We don't even see the top half of it very much. But here you have Christ, and Christ is damning all these people to hell. I mean, there's guys right here getting eaten by snakes and serpents and stuff. There's people burning to death. This is just craziness going on down here. And these are all happy people going to heaven. Here's a piece here. This piece is probably after it was cleaned. The other one was before. And here you have Christ raising his hand in judgment. And this is the Mother Mary. So here's Christ. And if you look, where's Christ looking? Christ is looking, at this guy right here. And here's someone here with his hand in defiance of God. But here you have someone holding a knife in defiance of God. Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo are contemporary. Leonardo da Vinci was older. No, actually, Michelangelo lived to be older. But when I don't know the exact ages, but when Michelangelo was 20 years old, Leonardo da Vinci may have been 50 years old. I'm not sure. But anyways, they didn't particularly like each other very much. Leonardo da Vinci wanted something flat and two-dimensional to look perfect, like it's three-dimensional. And Michelangelo wanted to take something three-dimensional and make it look better than perfect when the human eye looks at it. So it came from a totally different perspective on how to do Renaissance art. Michelangelo was a devout Catholic and has some beautiful writings. He was an author and did some beautiful writings on the soul and the beauty of the soul. And he thought Leonardo da Vinci was pretty much a heathen for digging up bodies and doing the things he did. He didn't feel you needed to dig up bodies to learn how to paint and draw forms. And Michelangelo was pretty darn good at it. So what you have is you have Christ right here looking at a figure which has Leonardo da Vinci's head on it, and Leonardo da Vinci, you know, defying Christ with this image. It was after Leonardo da Vinci had passed away. It was a way of getting the last word in on that argument. This is a piece. We don't have time to get into this. This is Moses. It's a well-known piece that he did in a tomb in a church. This is a piece here that was it was a model for a sculpture. He did a dying slave series, which is absolutely beautiful. But the reason why I put this piece up is because Rodin, who does The Thinker, in 1900, he looks at this piece and some of other pieces of Michelangelo, and they inspire him. So here you have Michelangelo, who's Renaissance. The word Renaissance means rebirth of the Greek classical age. This could very easily be a Greek sculpture. The Greeks would have done it just like this. So Michelangelo is replicating, to a certain degree, Greek sculpture. And then neoclassicism is a rebirth of the Renaissance and the classical period. And then when 1900, when we start modern sculpture with Rodin, he's going to do a rebirth of the classical period. This piece here is just this is called a dying slave. What Mike as where David is, it's in the academy. As you approach, there's sculptures on the side of the walkway to see David, and he has these big, huge blocks of marble, and you have these bodies that are breaking out of it. The whole back half is still attached, and just these partial bodies that are just breaking out of the marble. And there's just beautiful studies. And this is one that's complete, but this is a dying slave. Just Michelangelo just pushing the limits of the human form. This is the last piece I want to talk to you about. You know, Michelangelo at the end of his career, again, was very, very skilled. He gets an imperfect piece of marble, and what he does, he gets this piece of marble, and he throws away the rules of the Renaissance. And what he does here, instead of the composition being a triangle or a square, the composition of this piece is a spiral. So basically, you have a sculpture, and the design of it is in the round. So if you look at this piece right here, this is the Pieta instead of the Mother Mary and Christ, like the first one. Here you have the composition starts at the top of the head of Joseph, goes down the front, goes around the back of his shoulder, comes around the front shoulder that's leaning forward, goes to Christ's head, down Christ's arm, across the back side, his hip, Mother Mary's hip, around her hip, around her leg, and down his leg. So we have a circular spiral composition. And that's really new. That is something that's a beautiful piece that was done. Also, they have mourning, they have feelings and emotions on their face. And here you have the Christ, legs broken, body's dead, the body is being pushed to the ground by gravity. So there's three things here: three-dimensional composition instead of two-dimensional composition, feelings and emotions, and movement. And those three things right there are going to be the next art period, is going to be the major elements of the art period. So before Michelangelo dies, he literally takes the rules of the Renaissance and just tears them up, throws them away, and says, okay, I'm the master of the Renaissance, and now I'm starting the next art period, Mannerism and Baroque. And he starts the whole another world, a new direction. He had to do that before he died. So what happens is we got Michelangelo, who in the many, many things that he did, we understand Michelangelo to be the greatest artist of all time with the artwork that he did. We had Leonardo da Vinci, was maybe the smartest person that's ever lived, but Michelangelo's going to be the greatest artist that's ever lived. And he was a turtle. Okay, enough of that.